Mystic is gone. Wizards of the Coast just dropped the newest installment of Unearthed Arcana, which includes 3 new subclasses, 3 new spells, and 5 brand new feats for 5th edition. And there is a lot to cover here, so let's talk about it. Welcome to the MetaMagics channel, the place for everything Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, from news to reviews, build guides, and everything in between. If you like what you see in this video and want to see more like it, be sure to subscribe. Only 12% of you are. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into the newest edition of Unearthed Arcana. So jumping right in, this edition of Unearthed Arcana focuses on the psionic options revisited. There were previous versions of this psionic theme presented in earlier versions of Unearthed Arcana that have now been rewritten and revised based on community feedback and have all been written here. Now, there's a lot of information here. There's about 9 pages total with all of the new content. So there's a lot to cover. I'm going to try to go through this as quick as I can, just giving my overall impressions and opinions on the new stuff here. As usual, I won't be able to give a full in-depth opinion on everything until I test it for myself. I'm just going to try to quickly go through and give my impressions on everything we have. I will also post the previous Unearthed Arcana that this is based off of in the description down below, so check that out if you want to see the comparison. First off, we have the Psionic, a revised fighter subclass that was previously called the Psychic Warrior. The Soul Knife Rogue, a revised rogue subclass. The Psionic Soul, a revised sorcerer subclass that was previously called the Aberrant Mind. That wasn't too long ago. 3 new spells of the psionic theme, and 5 new feats that can confer psionic powers to any character. And lastly, the psionic wizard has been abandoned, and all these spells, Ego Whip, Id Insinuation, Mental Barrier, Psionic Blast, Psychic Crush, and Thought Shield have all been dusted and have been instead replaced with other things in this guide later down the line. There's a brief overview here of psionic power. Some of the creatures that were able to use this to their advantage were things like Mind Flayers and Githyanki. So the consistent elements of psionic powers are listed here. Psionic powers arise from the user rather than an external source. Psionic aptitude can be used to cast spells as well as create effects beyond the limits of spells. The powers associated with Psi and D&D are like those that appear in other media that feature psionic characters: telepathy, telekinesis, clairvoyance, and the like. Psi abilities have been around since the launch of 5th edition. Monsters and NPCs in all of these books listed here have psionic abilities. And in 2017, Wizards unofficially printed the Mystic class, focusing on psionic abilities. Through its features and subclasses, the Mystic allowed you to create a character who echoed the abilities of other classes in the game, but with a psionic twist. As much as many playtesters enjoyed the psionic themes in the Mystic, feedback was also clear that the class encroached on other classes' territory and that it was often too complex, too OP, or both. Following the feedback, we've decided to say farewell to the Mystic and explore other ways of giving psi-themed powers, as we did with the features of the Great Old One, Warlock, and the PHB. Mystic is gone. They decided to cut the cord and remove the Mystic entirely from the 5th edition supplementary material, to the joy of a lot of people. So now in 2019 and 2020, we're enjoying exploration, looking into providing options, subclasses, spells, and feats that allow players to manifest psionic powers. So it sounds like they're trying to take apart the Mystic class and just sprinkle it among all of the other things listed here. There's some other information here if you want to read this. Let's just jump right into the first new subclass here. For the fighter, we have the Psi Knight at level 3. Awake to the psionic power within, a Psi Knight is a fighter who augments their physical might with psi-infused weapon strikes, telekinetic lashes, and barriers of mental force. This sounds a little bit similar to the new Echo Knight found in the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount that I talked about in another video if you guys want to go watch that. For the first ability, we have your psionic talent. You harbor a wellspring of psionic power within yourself, an energy that ebbs and flows as you channel it in various ways. This power is represented by your psionic talent die, which is the new feature of this class. The starting size of which is a D6. You can use this die in the following ways. Protective Field. When you or another creature you can see within 30 feet of you takes damage, you can use your reaction to roll your psionic talent die and reduce the damage taken by the number rolled plus your intelligence modifier, minimum reduction of 1, as you create a momentary shield of telekinetic force. Psi-powered leap. When you make a high or long jump, you can roll your psionic talent die and extend the distance of the jump up to a number of feet equal to twice the number rolled, plus twice your intelligence modifier. Minimum of 1 extra foot. This extra distance costs you only 1 foot of movement. You also have telekinetic strike. You can propel your attacks with telekinetic force once on each of your turns immediately after you deal damage to a target within 30 feet of you. With a weapon attack, you can roll your psionic talent die and also deal force damage equal to the number rolled. Just a pretty good free damage boost there. Now this next part here is the mechanic regarding how the die functions. You can change the die size. If you roll the highest number on the psionic talent die, it decreases by 1 size after the roll. So if you roll a 6 on a d6 where it starts, it then becomes a D4, and if you roll a 4, it becomes unusable until you finish a long rest. You can't use any of your psionic abilities until you complete a long rest if you roll well enough. Conversely, if you roll a 1 on your psionic talent die, it increases by 1 die size after the roll up to its starting size. So you can't go higher than a D6 when you initially pick up this ability at level 3. This represents you conserving psionic energy for later use. For example, if you roll 1 on a D4, then die becomes a D6. Whenever you finish a long rest, your psionic talent die resets to its starting size, regardless of where it's at. When you reach certain levels in this class, the starting size goes up. At 5th level, it becomes a D8. At 11th level, it becomes a D10. And 17th level, it becomes a D12. Psi Replenishment. As a bonus action, you can calm your mind for a moment and restore your psionic talent die to its starting size. You then can't use Psi Replenishment again until you finish a long rest. So you don't have to rely entirely on RNG until you long rest. You can sort of just, if you're rolling way too well and you end up getting pretty low on your die, you can just quickly knock it back up. That's nice. At level 7, you get the Telekinetic Adept feature. You've mastered new ways to use telekinesis. Psionic Thrust. When you deal damage to a target with a telekinetic strike of your psionic talent, you can force the target to make a strength saving throw against a DC equal to 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. Until the save succeeds, you can knock the target prone or move it up to 10 feet in any direction horizontally. We then have telekinetic movement. If your psionic talent die is available, you can move an object or creature with your mind. As an action, you target one loose object that is large or smaller, or one willing creature other than yourself. If you can see the target and it is within 30 feet of you, you can move it up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space you can see. Alternatively, if it is a tiny object, you can move it to or from your hand. Either way, you can move the target horizontally, vertically, or both. When you take this action, then your psionic talent die decreases by 1 die size. You have to expend a good portion of power to use this ability. That's interesting. At level 10, we have Psi Enhanced Metabolism. The psionic energy flowing through you has bolstered your mind and body. You have resistance to poison and psychic damage, and you are immune to the poison condition. Now, resistance to psychic damage is interesting. I don't believe there are very many, if at all, ways to gain that resistance. Like, if you think of something like the Bear Totem Barbarian, it has a resistance to everything except psychic. So if you do some weird multi-class with Totem Barbarian and then Psi Fighter, you can just have resistance to all types of damage. That's really interesting. At level 15, you have Bulwark of Force. You can shield yourself and others with telekinetic force. As a bonus action, you can choose creatures, which can include you, that you can see within up to 30 feet of you, up to a number of creatures equal to your intelligence modifier, minimum of 1 creature. Each of the chosen creatures is protected by half cover for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated. So for a quick refresher, half cover gives a target +2 bonus to their AC. So you can essentially just give as many creatures as you have intelligence modifier +2 bonus to their AC for a minute. That's pretty nice. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest, unless you decrease your psionic talent die by 1 die size to use this feature again. So again, you have to expend a lot of power to be able to use your abilities multiple times. It's a very interesting playstyle. I do like this. Level 18, you have the Telekinetic Master feature. Your ability to move creatures and objects with your mind is matched by few. If your psionic talent die is available, you can cast the Telekinesis spell requiring no components. Your spellcasting ability for this spell is Intelligence. When you cast the spell, your psionic talent die decreases by 1 size. So you can do this at level 18, as it says right here. So you can cast at level 18 the Telekinesis spell 5 times per rest. That's pretty good for a martial class like the fighter. Overall, this class seems very high risk, high reward. Having to expend the core function of this class, the psionic talent die, to use the abilities more than once is interesting. I don't know how powerful this is. I would have to see this used in a game, but I am a fan of how this plays so far. Next up, we have the Rogue, which at level 3 gains the new archetype, the Soul Knife, which has got to be the edgiest name for a subclass I think I have ever heard, which perfectly suits the Rogue. Most assassins strike with physical weapons. Most assassins strike with physical weapons, whereas the Soul Knife strikes and infiltrates with the mind, cutting through barriers both physical and psychic. This entire wall of text here is some of the edgiest I have ever seen. This is literally perfect for the Rogue. At level 3, you gain the Psionic Talent ability, where you gain your Psionic Talent die, like the other classes here, and you can use it in the following ways. Psi Bolstered Knack. When your non-psionic training fails you, you can tap into your psionic power to help. If you fail an ability check using a skill or tool with which you have proficiency, you can roll your psionic talent die and add the number rolled to the check, potentially turning failure into a success. So this sounds like just being able to use the guidance cantrip at will, except, however, it does come with 2 caveats. 1, you do get to know if you failed the roll beforehand, which is fantastic. That is definitely an important factor in this. However, you do have to be proficient in the skill that you use this on, which isn't a lot of them. So there is a trade-off there. You have to decide if that's worth it or not. But you also get a higher starting die, which is a D6, and at higher levels, you would gain the D8, D10, D12, like the fighter. I think this is just a better guidance cantrip, which is a neat ability to have that you can just use at will until you roll high enough that you have to wait until you have to long rest to get the die back. Next up, we have Psychic Whispers. You can use your psychic abilities to establish telepathic communication between yourself and others. Perfect or quiet infiltration. As an action, you give yourself and at least one other creature the ability to speak telepathically with each other. When you do so, roll your psionic talent die and choose creatures you can see up to a number of the creatures equal to the number rolled. For 1 hour, the chosen creatures can speak telepathically with you, and you can speak telepathically with them. Send or receive a message, no action required. You and the other creature must be within 1 mile of each other. A creature can't use this telepathy if it can't speak any languages, and a creature can end the telepathic communication at any time, no action required. You and the creature don't need to speak a common language to understand each other. Now, that last bit is interesting because it essentially functions as a comprehend languages trait, since you don't need to understand the creature you want to telepathically communicate with. So like if you're in a foreign town, village, city, and none of the population speaks the language you do, you can just magically understand any language, should the creature be willing to communicate with you, mind you. But I think this ability will definitely be slept on by a lot of people initially, because the ability to speak telepathically is very common, but not having to speak a common language is very important. And for changing the die's size, it's the same thing as the fighter. You roll high, you get less of them. You roll low, you get more of them. Right up here, same deal, psi replenishment. Next up, we have Psychic Blades, also at level 3. You manifest your psionic power as shimmering blades of psychic energy. When you are about to make a melee or ranged weapon against a creature, you can manifest the psychic blade from your free hand to make the attack with that blade. This magic blade is a simple melee weapon with the finesse and thrown properties. It has normal range of 60 feet and no long range, and on a hit, it deals psychic damage equal to 1d6 plus the ability modifier used for the attack roll. The blade vanishes immediately after it hits or misses its target and leaves no mark on its target if it deals damage. After you attack with the blade, you can make a melee or ranged weapon attack with a second psychic blade as a bonus action on the same turn, provided your other hand is free to create it. The damage die of this bonus attack is 1d4 instead of 1d6. This sounds a lot like the 2-weapon fighting feature, but you can just conjure the blade, doesn't leave a mark, which sounds like a very niche trait to have on this. I don't really know how I feel about this one. Next up, we have Soul Blades at 9th level. Your Psychic Blades are now an expression of your suffused soul, giving you finer control over them in the following ways. Homing strikes. If you make an attack roll with your Psychic Blades and miss the target, you can roll your Psionic Talent die and add the number rolled to the attack roll. If this causes the attack to hit, your Psionic Talent die decreases by 1 die size regardless of the number rolled. So this functions very similar to just having the Bless spell, but again on a normally higher die, being a D6 set starting rather than a D4. And you also get this ability at level 9, which means that if you go back up to here, you will see that you already have access to a D8 instead of a D6. So at level 9, you get the ability to roll a D8 and add it to your attack roll. And if it hits, it goes down to a D6. Again, expending that power to gain a very nice ability. You also get Psychic Teleportation. If your Psionic Talent die is available, you can hurl your Psychic Blades to magically transport yourself to another location. As a bonus action, you manifest one of your Psychic Blades and throw it at an unoccupied space you can see, up to a number of feet equal to 5 times the highest number on your Psionic Talent die. So when you get this ability, you would be able to travel up to 45 feet away with this ability, the second you get it. You then teleport to that space, the blade vanishes, and your Psionic Talent die decreases by 1 die size. So it's basically a Blink or Misty Step spell, is what this sounds like, at the expense of one of your core ability die. At level 13, you get Psionic Veil. You can weave a veil of psychic static to mask yourself. As an action, you can magically become invisible along with anything you are wearing or carrying for 10 minutes or until you dismiss this effect. No action required. This invisibility ends if you deal damage to a creature or if you force a creature to make a saving throw. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest unless you decrease your Psionic Talent die by 1 die size to use this feature again. So at the very least, a free cast of invisibility once per rest. At the very most, 3 casts of ability per rest, and the inability to use any of your other abilities. I'm noticing a very strong theme of resource management with these classes. You basically have to decide on the fly which abilities of yours are most important since you have a limited pool of die to use them with, which I definitely think is more fun than just using the ability once and then having a long rest and wait, and then you don't get to make any decisions. That's just what I'm noticing so far. At level 17, you gain the Rend Mind feature. You can sweep your psychic blades directly through a creature's mind. When you use your psychic blades to deal sneak attack damage to a creature, you can force that target to make a wisdom saving throw, DC equal to 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus dex modifier. Unless the save succeeds, the target is stunned until the end of your next turn. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest, or you decrease your psionic talent die by 1 size to use it again. So you can theoretically chain stuns together at 17, which, by the way, reminder, at 17 you gain the d12 die, so you get 5 uses of this per rest. So should you land this on an important target, you can chain stun them for up to 5 turns. At level 17 though, again, you're gonna be fighting some really powerful monsters. I don't know how effective this ability is going to be, and to sacrifice your psionic talent die, again, I'd have to see it in play, but in the right circumstance, this can completely change a fight with, like, the big bad. Or you can make a legendary monster burn all of its resistances so it doesn't get stunned, which is nice. I think this class is very flavorful. I don't know how... I can't really determine its strength until I see it used in play. Maybe I'll do some theory crafting in a different video, make a build. Next up, we have Sorcerer. At first level, the Sorcerer gains the Sorceress Origin feature, which is the Psionic Soul, as expected. There's a whole lore thing you can read here if you'd like. If you want to roll for a table, you got that here too. Move right into the abilities. At first level, you get the Psionic Talent, you get your die, like the others. But the first feature you can use at level 1, by the way, is your Psionic Discovery. You can unlock the ability to cast a mind-oriented sorcerer spell you don't already know. After meditating for 10 minutes, roll your Psionic Talent die and choose a sorcerer spell of a level for which you have spell slots and that is in the School of Divination or Enchantment. You know this chosen spell for a number of hours equal to the number rolled. There's a lot of variance there, but that could be really good. You also get Psychic Sorcery. When you cast a spell, you can use your mind to form it rather than relying on words, gestures, or materials. To do so, roll your Psionic Talent die. The spell then requires no verbal component, and if you rolled the level of the spell or higher, the spell doesn't require somatic or material components. So this is essentially the subtle spell meta magic that you get at level 1. And because you literally cannot roll lower than a 1, you will always get this ability should you use it this early. And I always felt that sorcerers never really got enough points to use meta magics effectively. So this is a nice, just free cast you get of this. I like this feature. You also get telepathic speech. You can form a telepathic connection between your mind and the mind of another. As a bonus action, choose one creature you can see and roll your psionic talent die. For a number of hours equal to the number rolled, you and your chosen creature can speak telepathically with each other while you two are within a number of miles equal to each other on the number rolled. To understand each other, you must each speak mentally in a language the other knows, so a bit worse than the rogue one. The telepathic connection ends early if you use this ability to form a connection with a different creature. So this one is definitely just the other rogue telepathic communication one, but worse. Kind of unfortunate. Changing the die size and psi replenishment work the same way as the other classes do. At level 6, you gain the Psychic Strike feature. You'll learn to channel additional psychic energy into your spells. Immediately after you deal damage to a creature with a sorcerer spell for which you expend a spell slot, you can roll your psionic talent die and also deal psychic damage to that creature, so a damage buff similar to the fighter one above. You can deal this extra damage only once per turn. At level 14, you get the Mind Over Body. You can now use the psi that flows through you as you give your body extraordinary abilities. As a bonus action, you can roll your psionic talent die and spend one or more sorcery points to magically transform yourself for a number of hours equal to the number rolled. Until the transformation ends, you gain one of the following benefits of your choice for each sorcery point you spent, choosing a different benefit for each point. You can see an enemy invisible creature for 60 feet of you, provided it isn't behind total cover. You gain a flying speed equal to your walking speed, and you can hover. You gain a swimming speed equal to twice your walking speed, and you can breathe underwater. Your body, along with any other equipment you are wearing or carrying, becomes pliable. You can move through any space as narrow as 1 inch without squeezing, and you can spend 5 feet of movement to escape from non-magical restraints or being grappled. Now, a couple important things to note here. You don't ever really need more than one of these at a time. You won't really need to fly and swim at the same time and gain water breathing with both. So you really would only want to spend one sorcery point, and at 14th level, you do have a good bit of them. If you don't want to spend one sorcery point and a psionic talent die to just fly, that's really good. Being able to escape a grapple in a pinch is nice. This is a very flexible, versatile ability. This one is something that I think sorcerers desperately needed as squishy casters. I'm a big fan of this one. Level 18, you get the Psychic Aura ability. If your psionic talent die is available, you can unleash your psionic power in a crackling aura of psychic energy. As a bonus action, you can magically radiate this transparent 30-foot radius aura for 1 minute or until you're incapacitated or lose the use of your psionic talent die. Whenever the creature starts its turn in the aura or moves into it for the first time, you can roll your psionic talent die and deal psychic damage to the creature, equaling the number rolled plus your charisma modifier. If the creature takes any of this damage, its speed is halved until the start of its next turn. So this is a good warding type ability that just makes creatures really hard to get to you. We saw something similar to this in the Wildmount book. Again, I reviewed the spells in there too, so if you want to go check that out. But this essentially makes you much harder to reach. However, it does say that you are unable to use this once your psionic talent die runs out, meaning that if you burn through all of your psionic talent dies in the middle of combat and you have this up, it just drops and anything can get to you. So be careful when using this, but this is a fun ability. I like this. And with that, we can move on to the 3 new, or rather some of these are revised spells in this Unearthed Arcana. For Bard spells, they get the Intellect Fortress spell at 4th level. For Sorcerers, they get Mind Sliver, the new cantrip, and Mind Thrust at 2nd level, and Intellect Fortress at 4th level. Warlocks get the Mind Sliver cantrip. Interesting. Maybe we'll finally see something different than just Eldritch Blast. Wizards get Mind Sliver, Mind Thrust, and Intellect Fortress as well. So what is Intellect Fortress? It is a 4th level abjuration that is a 1 action casting time with a range of 30 feet and lasts for 1 hour with concentration. For the duration, you or one willing creature you can see within range has resistance to psychic damage as well as advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. When you cast this spell using a slot of a 5th level or higher, you can target 1 additional creature for each slot above level 4th. The creatures must be within 30 feet of each other when you target them. So if you're fighting something that requires you to make a lot of wisdom saves, then this is very nice if you're trying to fight a lot of crowd control. 4th level though, for just advantage on some saving throws, again, in the right circumstance, this is probably very good, but for most of the time, I can't really see this being that useful. Would have to see played in a game. We have the cantrip Mind Sliver that was introduced in the previous Unearthed Arcana regarding psionic abilities. Casting time 1 action, range of 60 feet, and 1 round duration. You drive a disorienting spike of psychic energy into the mind of 1 creature you can see within range. The target must make an intelligence saving throw. Unless the saving throw is successful, the target takes 1d6 psychic damage. Unless the saving throw is successful, the target takes 1d6 psychic damage, and the first time it makes a saving throw before the end of your next turn, it must roll a d4 and subtract the number rolled. So a cantrip that gives a target almost disadvantage on their next saving throw is pretty good. 1d6 is pretty low, but again, the effect of making a target more vulnerable to a more powerful saving throw that they might have to make is nice. As with most or all cantrips, the spell's damage increases by 1d6 when you reach 5th, 11th, and 17th level. I kind of wish that the die on these saving throws scaled up with levels, like with the damage. I think to buff this ability to a good place, you would have it be like at 5th level, it increases to a d6 for their saving throw. At 11th, it would be a d8, and 17th would be a d12. It would kind of fit with the theme of the psionics that they're going with now, where your psionic talent die goes up with levels. So with this spell, they would have to roll a higher die with additional levels. That's just my opinion on how they could make this pretty fun, but overall seems pretty good at low levels. Next up, we have Mind Thrust, a 2nd level enchantment with a casting time of 1 action, range of 90 feet with a 1 round duration. You thrust a lance of psychic disruption into the mind of 1 creature you can see within range. The target must make an intelligence saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 3d6 psychic damage, and it can't take a reaction until the end of its next turn. Moreover, on its turn, it must choose whether it gets to move, an action, or a bonus action. It only gets one of the 3. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage and suffers none of the spell's other effects. At higher levels, when you cast this spell using a spell slot of 3rd level or higher, you can target 1 additional creature for each slot above 2nd. The creatures must be within 30 feet of each other when you target them. So this spell is incredibly high risk. Succeeding on this spell basically ensures that you will not be hit. Succeeding on this spell when cast at range basically ensures that you're probably not going to get hit by whatever you're targeting, as they do have to decide if they want to get to you or attack you. But half of 3d6 damage if they make their save at worst is very low. High risk, high reward. So that's nice, but being able to target additional creatures though and possibly nullify most of other creatures' turns does make this very good when used at higher levels though. So I like this one. And that is it for the new spells. So now we're going to move on to the last part of this new Unearthed Arcana, the new feats. There are 5 new feats listed here. To begin, we have Metabolic Control. For the prerequisite, a psionic talent feature or wild talent feat. You have the refined psionic control over your body's functions. You gain the following benefits. Increase your strength, dexterity, or constitution by 1 to a maximum of 20. If your psionic talent die is available, you can take an action to channel your psionic power to nourish yourself for the next 24 hours, as if you consumed sufficient food and water for a day. When you take this action, your psionic talent die decreases by 1 die size. If your psionic talent die is available, you can meditate for 1 minute, at the end of which you gain the benefits of a finish. At the end of your psionic talent, if your psionic talent die is available, you can meditate for 1 minute, at the end of which you gain the benefits of finishing a short rest, and your psionic talent die decreases by 1 die. You can't meditate this way again until you finish a long rest. So essentially, a free short rest once per day. So to recap, increase one of the 3 scores by 1. You don't need to really eat for an entire day if you want to use this. You really don't need to ever carry food at all. And you get 1 free short rest per day, which is just hit dice you can use after only 1 minute. This feat is extremely versatile, and I'm just thinking of how there are feats that are similar to, like, you gain a score that increases by 1 and maybe 1 other minor function and nothing else. This one, I'm sensing some power creep here. I have a hunch that this might get even further changed, maybe toned down just a little bit. I don't really know what they would do, but there's definitely some power creep here compared to the other ones that up your score by 1 and do something else. Next up, we have the telekinetic feat, requiring the psionic talent feature, a wild talent feat. You learn to move things with your mind. You gain the following benefits: increase one of your other scores, int, wisdom, or charisma by 1, up to a max of 20. You learn the mage hand cantrip. You can cast it without verbal or somatic components, and you can make the spectral hand invisible. If you already know this spell, its range increases by 30 feet when you cast it. Its spellcasting ability is the ability increased by this feat. As a bonus action, you can try to telekinetically shove 1 creature you can see within 30 feet of you. When you do so, you roll your psionic talent die, and the target must succeed on a strength saving throw, DC 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus the ability modifier of the score increased by this feat, or be moved toward you or away from you up to a number of feet times to 5 times the number you rolled. A creature can willingly fail this save. So right away, being able to do this without verbal or somatic components means that you can just do this without basically notifying anything else of what you're trying to do with it, which is kind of fun. Being able to, like, open doors without, like, the things that come to mind, like, Mage Hand is a really underutilized cantrip in a lot of campaigns, like being able to open doors without triggering traps or pick up possibly dangerous or trapped objects. And being able to do this subtly is fun. Don't really know how useful it is, but making Mage Hand better if you take this feat, which on an already really powerful cantrip, it's good. It's a good feat. Next up, we have telepathic, same prerequisite. You increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 up to a maximum of 20. You can telepathically speak to any creature you can see within 30 feet of you. Your telepathic utterances are in a language you know, and the creature understands you only if it knows that language. Your communication doesn't give the creature the ability to respond to you telepathically. If your psionic talent die is available, you can cast the Detect Thoughts spell, requiring no components. When you start casting the spell, your psionic talent die decreases by 1 die size. Your spellcasting ability for the spell is the ability increased by this feat. Free Detect Thoughts is interesting. This just seems like an even worse version of the worst version of the fighter one that was listed above. Like the sorcerer gained this feature in their class. The fighter got a better version. This is just an even worse version of the sorcerer one, because they can't even respond to you. I don't really know how useful this one is. It doesn't seem that good. Detect Thoughts is kind of weak in most circumstances, not all, but in most circumstances, this really isn't going to be that useful. This really is kind of a weak feat, in my opinion. Next up, we have Tower of Iron Will, same prerequisite. Your mind's defenses are formidable. After you or another creature you can see within 30 feet of you fails a saving throw, you can use your reaction to roll your psionic talent die and add the number rolled to the saving throw, potentially causing it to succeed. Now this one is really powerful because notice it doesn't say that it requires you to expend a die or like lower your die once you use this. Only you'd have to lower it if you roll the highest number, but at that point it's done its job. This is a really powerful feat. I like this one. So finally, we have Wild Talent. This is essentially gaining the psionic talent die on any class if you just take the feat, which is very interesting. However, you are limited in the abilities that you can get with this. You get the psionic talent die, which starts as a d6, and you can use 2 different abilities here. You can start off with the psi boosted ability. When you make an ability check with the ability increased by this feat, so only one of possibly 6 different ability types, you can roll your psionic talent die and add the number rolled to the check. You can choose to do so before or after rolling the d20, but before you know whether the check succeeded or failed, that's a little bit risky. You also have access to Psi-Guided Strike. Once on each of your turns when you hit with an attack roll that uses the ability increased by this feat, you can roll your psionic talent die after you make the damage roll and replace one of the damage dice with the number rolled on the psionic talent die. So this essentially functions similar to the great weapon fighting that like barbarians get, where you can reroll 1s and 2s. So that's interesting. I don't really know how useful this is because you only get to use it a very limited number of times. And if you want to do this, you would have to increase either your strength or your dex. You changing the die size functions just like the ones above. Don't need to reread this. And the psi replenishment is the same. So that is going to do it for this edition of Unearthed Arcana. That was a lot of information. I sense another book coming soon. Wizards has been going crazy with printing so much new material that I definitely feel like we're going to see a new book coming soon. When or what that is, I have no idea. I'm just speculating. But what do you guys think of these new Unearthed Arcana editions, these psionics revisited? I'm very curious on what you guys have. I'm very curious on what you guys think about this, so please let me know in the comments what you think of these new classes, spells, feats, anything. Are they really strong, weak? A lot of my opinion on this is entirely just based on my own game knowledge. I'd have to use these in an actual campaign before I can make a full-on analysis of these. But that's going to do it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more reviews coming soon. I'll be reviewing a lot more material in the coming weeks, so keep a lookout for that. And until next time, guys, happy gaming.